When we think of famous English medieval battles, Hastings or Bosworth Field may come to mind, both of these being dynasty-ending events, with other battles like Agincourt, Crécy and Poitiers of the 100 Years' War, also featuring heavily in the public consciousness. Arguably, however, the most important battle of medieval England was fought well over 100 years before Duke William's conquest, with the year of 937 perhaps as deserving of recall and renown as that of 1066. The Battle of Brunanburh effectively settled the question of England and defined the countries of Britain to this day. Alfred the Great's remarkable reign, in which he settled and fortified the old kingdoms of Wessex and Mercia, ended in 899, which saw further Saxon expansion north and east under his son and daughter, Edward the Elder and Æthelflæd, the Lady of the Mercians. The Elder's reign saw him inherit Alfred's title of King of the Anglo-Saxons, which his father took upon taking London and accepting Æthelred, Lord of the Mercians, as his vassal in 886. Edward expanded the realm from this unified territory into the border of the Kingdom of York. Upon the death of his father in 924, however, Æthelstan, the Elder's eldest son, was hailed as king in Mercia, though his succession was initially challenged in Wessex by Æthelweard, Edward's son by a different wife. Since questions over the legitimacy over Edward's first marriage lingered at the time, many saw Æthelstan as the inferior Ætheling. Luckily for Alfred's dream of a united England, Æthelweard did not long outlive his father, dying mysteriously just a couple of weeks later. It may have been the Elder's intention to divide his domain between his sons, having Æthelstan inherit Mercia and Æthelweard Wessex. With his half-brother's demise, Æthelstan took lordship of all of his father's domain. Æthelstan was crowned in Kingston-upon-Thames, located on the border between Mercia and Wessex, likely a deliberate act designed to demonstrate that, like his father and grandfather, he was lord of all the Anglo-Saxons. The location also had special significance as the coronation location of his father and would also be the choice for several of their successors. In addition, Archbishop of Canterbury, Æthelm, created a new religious service in which the king wore a crown rather than the traditional helmet. Opposition still plagued the early reign of the king, with another plot emerging with an obscure lord known as Alfred scheming to blind Æthelstan and replace him with Æthelweard's younger brother, Edwin. Eventually though, Edwin would also mysteriously perish in a shipwreck, likely designed to result in his death around 933. Perhaps the most significant event of his reign came early on in 927, when Æthelstan took the title King of the English and discarded his former title King of the Anglo-Saxons. Though Alfred, and especially Edward's reign, had seen the House of Egbert's spectacular rise from the lowest ebb of Alfred's internal exile in 871 to his victory at Edington, and then to the borders of the last Viking stronghold of York a generation later, neither Æthelstan's father or grandfather claimed this land or the title. In 926, the king had made inroads into incorporating York by arranging the marriage of his sister to Sitrick. In another lucky twist of fate, however, Sitrick died just a year into their accord, presenting King Æthelstan with a golden opportunity to absorb this last bastion of Danish domination into his own kingdom, which he gleefully did, though Guthrith, the king of Dublin and cousin of Sitrick, did attempt to wrest back control of York. The Danes reluctantly accepted Æthelstan's lordship, though this new enlarged Saxon kingdom unnerved other powerful men in Britain, including Constantine II, king of Alba, where modern-day Scotland is today. Constantine, as well as King Owain of Strathclyde, the king of Deheubarth, and the lord of Bamburgh, all acknowledged the king's overlordship, but this stability would not last. This new kingdom presented a dangerous shift in power that could in theory overwhelm any of these smaller kingdoms. However, Constantine and the others wagered that Æthelstan's might was not yet equal to all of them combined. Constantine forged an alliance with the disgruntled kingdom of Dublin too, by marrying his daughter to Olaf Guthfrithson, with another alliance with the Strathclyde Celts being much easier to build. Meanwhile, with the north secured, Æthelstan may have felt secure that his suzerainty over the kings of Wales was similarly stable. Since the Welsh rulers had submitted to both Alfred and his aunt Æthelflæd, he in turn inherited this. Æthelstan, though, was not simply some unwashed Saxon warlord, but was a clever politician and diplomat. Building on the old tradition of the West Saxon court, he maintained relations with the Carolingian court, Æthelstan's great-grandfather Æthelwulf had married Judith, a Carolingian princess, with Egbert, the family's founder, even living within Charlemagne's court during a period of exile before his house's rise. Æthelstan, like Æthelwulf, claimed the prestige of marrying into the Carolingian dynasty. Though he never married himself, he did have a number of sisters available to forge links across the Channel. Eadgifu was married to Charles the Simple himself, even mothering the future King Louis IV. The young king also did one better by forging another prestigious marriage with Otto I, Holy Roman Emperor. Another sister, Eadgif, was matched with Otto. Æthelstan also intervened directly in foreign affairs, harbouring the aforementioned Louis IV during a period of exile, and even helping to reinstate Alan II as Duke of Brittany following the region's conquest by Vikings in 936. Indeed, Æthelstan's court was most likely the most cosmopolitan of the Anglo-Saxon period, though such close links with the European courts soon faded after his death. Extending King Alfred's legal reforms and founding many new churches, Æthelstan also proved to be a wise domestic ruler, maintaining West Saxon dominance in Wales by exacting a heavy annual tribute. Welsh and Scots leaders, including Constantine, even attended his charter meetings, with the king creating an effective central government, granting larger responsibilities to ealdormen of his kingdom, who traditionally had only governed shires as opposed to the larger territories under the king. Æthelstan's military success went from strength to strength. He pushed the Cornish out of the city of Exeter and fortified its walls, establishing a border at the Tamar. In 934, the king invaded Scotland, perhaps to reinforce his authority over the north generally. One possible excuse, according to John of Worcester, is that Constantine broke his treaty with Æthelstan. The 933 death of Edwin, his rival for the crown, also settled opposition somewhat, perhaps enabling him to march freely north. The king was accompanied on campaign by 4 Welsh kings, as well as a retinue of 18 bishops and 13 earls. This campaign proved overwhelming, given that according to Simeon of Durham, the English attacked in a two-pronged way, ravaging by land as far as northeast Scotland, and raiding by sea as far as Caithness, and even possibly to the Norse-held Orkneys. 935 does have a charter attested to by Constantine Owain of Strathclyde, as well as the Welsh kings. 934 was also important in that Olaf succeeded his brother Guthfrith. Marrying Constantine's daughter, the alliance was supplemented by support from Owain of Strathclyde. By the autumn of 937, Olaf was ready and invaded northern England with Constantine and Owain, hoping to cut the overmighty English king down to size. The timing of the attackers was unusual given campaigning usually took place in summer, caught Æthelstan off guard initially, though once news began to filter through of this new threat, the king slowly began to gather the fiefs of Mercia and Wessex together. Meanwhile, the coalition ravaged English-controlled land as they moved south. Æthelstan's own army moved to meet the coalition in what subsequent generations would merely call the Great Battle, so called for its bloody ferocity. Bizarrely, for such an important battle, we actually don't know for sure where it was fought, though the leading candidate is near the village of Brunanburh on the Wirral. The battle lasted all day and was hard fought. According to the poem Battle of Brunanburh in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the 2 lines of men fought in the traditional shield wall formation, with Æthelstan's warriors eventually gaining the upper hand by hewing their way through a part of the coalition's shield wall and thus breaking through. This breakthrough effectively ended the battle, the coalition men fleeing. Olaf managed to flee the field back to Dublin, with Constantine also surviving the chaos, though Owain's fate is not mentioned. The victory ultimately settled the matter of a unified and permanent Kingdom of England, which would endure to its current form today. Æthelstan's golden reign would end just 2 years later, in 939, ushering a quick series of kings before the longer and more disastrous reign of King Ethelred the Unready. Æthelstan's England, though, would endure a renewed Danish conquest in 1016, seeing a temporary restoration of the native House of Wessex in 1042, before a new foreign line seized the crown after the far more famous Battle of Hastings in 1066. The importance of Brunanburh, though, cannot be denied. If Constantine, Olaf and Owain had triumphed in 937, it's possible much of Æthelstan's gains could have been reversed while still new, with York and Northumbria breaking off once more under the Danes, and perhaps more territory ceded to the others. Indeed, York did break off briefly under Æthelstan's successors, but the tide of history ultimately bent towards English unity. With defeat at Brunanburh, the principle of English overlordship would have been seriously damaged, perhaps provoking further rebellions in Wales and Cornwall, fragmenting the young England irreparably, or at least delaying its dominance for decades to come. We shall never truly know, yet it's not hard to see how this battle was just as important for the history of England as the Battle of Hastings over a century later, with Æthelstan arguably creating the England that William would later conquer. Thanks for the view. I love making these videos, but as you can imagine, they take a lot of work and time. So if you enjoyed this content, think about dropping a like, subscribe and smash that bell button for notifications of future uploads, and I shall see you next time.